So the author initially hints about Draupadi and Sita. Women were considered equal to men. There is no discrimination at all there. Next, he also talks about Queen Bessie. So Queen Bessie was an American civil aviator. So the author compares the women in India and the European women as sisters. Okay, he talks in that way. Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shalini, Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today we are here to discuss about one of the essays prescribed by University of Mysuru for first sem BCom. So let us begin our session. So this essay is written by Dr. BR Ambedkar, who has contributed for our constitution. Okay. So this essay is about the position of women compared in two religions, that is Hinduism and Buddhism. So let us understand what is there in this essay. Let us start our session. First, let us peep into what is there in today's session. We are going to understand little about the author first, and then we will be going to the summary. Fine. Let us learn little about the author. So I need not have to tell much about Dr. BR Ambedkar, who is the author of this essay. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar was born on 14th April 1891. So he died on 6th December 1956. What is noteworthy is that he has played various roles in our society. He was an Indian jurist, that is somebody who is related to law, jury. Okay, so he was also an economist. He has contributed to the fiscal years of India also. He was not only an economist, but he was also the leader of untouchables. So untouchable, he has contributed to bring up the untouchables in such a way that today they have an equal status compared to the other castes in the society. So he was considered, he in fact is worshipped by the untouchables in Indian society. Fine. Let us move on to understand more about him. The committee that drafted the Constitution of India had Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the forefront. So he was one of the prominent committee members in framing the Constitution of India. In his early career, he was an economist, a professor, and a lawyer. So he was always concerned with the Indian economy. He was also concerned with from very close situation. Okay, he saw the situation of the untouchables. He saw the situation of all other castes and creed that in comparison to the untouchables. Hence, he fought for the rights of untouchables. Fine. So he was an economist. So he contributed to to bring up the economy of India. He was also a professor. Okay. He also taught in colleges. He was also a professor, and he was not also a lawyer. Fine. So his later life, in his early career, he had played various roles, but in later life, he was actually marked by his political activities. He was also an active politician. Okay, he has seen various aspects in political life also. He became involved in campaigning and negotiation for India's independence. He has his hand in India's independence also. Before independence as well as after independence, he has played a major role in India's independence. Fine. So in 1990, Bharat Ratna, the most prestigious award of India, was given to him posthumously. The meaning of posthumous is nothing but he was awarded after his death. Fine. So he was awarded Bharat Ratna posthumously. It was conferred posthumously on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. His followers usually use the salutation Jai Bhim. Salutation is how they address. Fine. So they just treat him, they worship him, I said. So Jai Bhim is something they portray, they use to show that they are untouchables, but they worship him because he was a very prominent leader, very lovable leader. Fine. So he was liked by all the untouchables because he gave them equal rights in the society. That's why they use this salutation Jai Bhim. Fine. So this was about the author. So now we have to understand about now we will move on to the summary of this essay. This is actually a very interesting essay. Fine. So in the beginning, the author talks about the stature of women in Indian society, Indian as well as the Western society. He compares it. So at the outset, I'm telling you here, there is a comparison of Indian women with the Western women, and also Indian women, that is in particular Hinduism and Buddhism. Fine. So there was one rejoinder that was published in Eve's Daily. That is, in India, women were used to statecraft long before they ever did in Europe. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata are full of such instances. So here he is comparing Indian women with the Western, that is the women in Europe. So they were sister concern. Okay, the women of Europe and the women of India. So they were sister concern, and they were compared with each other. And here, after reading this essay of Dr. BR Ambedkar's, the Eve's Daily has published that there are many instances in Ramayana and Mahabharata wherein women were used for statecraft. Statecraft means they were into administration. So there are many instances in these epics that we consider the holy books. Fine. So starting with this, so what is the essay all about is we have to understand. Fine. So the author initially hints about Draupadi and Sita. You already know about Draupadi and Sita, right? Draupadi had 5 husbands, that is Pancha Pandavas. Sita's husband was Rama. Fine. So Draupadi, let us just think in a little different way. Before that, we'll understand what little about Draupadi and Sita. I'll just narrate a very short instance of Draupadi and Sita here. Draupadi was used by her 5 husbands. They were into gambling, right? So Draupadi was used by her husbands for gambling. Even she was gambled away by the 5 husbands. Similarly, Sita, she was actually taken away by Ravana, and she had to fight. She had successfully stopped all his advances towards her. Okay, so whenever he came near her, she had successfully stayed away from him. But what did she get in return? That is doubt, and she was set on. She had to undergo this fire test in order to show that she is pure. Fine. So what did Draupadi and what did Sita get? Though they were very honest, though they were very pure. So this is what the author talks about in this essay. This is one of the instances that the author talks about in his essay. Fine. So he talks about Draupadi and Sita here. He compares them, their situation, to that of the women in the Western countries. Okay. So just think, had Draupadi been given a chance to gamble her husbands, would she have done it? Had Sita been given a chance to doubt her husband, had Sita been given a chance to have an upper hand when Rama doubts her, what would she have done? So just think over in a different way. Would they do the same thing what was done to them? No, right? Because women have a different mentality. Okay, so women have a different way of thinking is what the author tries to tell over here. Fine. So the women of India were used by the statecraft. Even Draupadi had her hand in statecraft, means in administration. Sita also had her hand in administration, but still their beauty lies in the way they behaved. When, like, they would have used their statecraft, they were actually queens, right? So they would have used their statecraft, they would have used their power, and they should have taken a revenge on their husbands, right? But they did not do this. Let me just tell you about Queen Elizabeth, or maybe any Western queen for that matter. Queen Elizabeth had got her husband executed when such a situation had come. When she was in trouble because of her husband, she had got her husband executed because she wanted to come out of the trouble. But Draupadi and Sita, though they had that power, they did not take law in their hands. They just did what a typical Indian housewife would do. Right? So this is what the author tries to tell over here. This is what the author tries to bring out the goodness of Draupadi and Sita. That is basically speaking about Indian women. Okay? So that he is trying to bring it out. Fine. So the author refers to the women in Europe as sisters of women in India. So the sister concern, as I said. So the author compares the women in India and the European women as sisters. Okay, he talks in that way. Fine. So when they got an opportunity, they made use of it. That is, he's talking about the Western women. Whenever they got an opportunity to use the statecraft, they have made use of it. But Indian women, they have not made use of it. Few Indian women, let me tell you, it is few Indian women who haven't made use of this statecraft. Fine. So let us see what else the author has to say over here. So the author speaks about the following prominent Western women, the European women, I can tell you. Okay. So as I said about Queen Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth occupies a very important place in history. That is because the reign, you can almost say a kind of dictatorship, not completely a dictatorship, but a kind of, okay. So the way she did the administration and all, so it is noteworthy, okay. So Queen Elizabeth, as I said, had she been in the place of Draupadi, she would have done the same thing what she did now, okay. She got her husband executed only because she wanted to get out of the trouble. So that was one of the prominent women that the author talks about. Next, he also talks about Queen Bessie. So Queen Bessie was an American civil aviator. She was the first black woman to get the license of a pilot. Okay, so she was the first person to, that is a Negro person to fly a jet. Okay, so she was the first person to get the license. So the author talks about this also, like how women occupied, how women took power into their hands, how women started coming up in life. So that is what the author wants to tell here. Fine. So he also talks about Maria Theresa Christina, who was a prostitute. So she started from streets. Okay, she rose up to the level of a good administrator. Fine. So though she started from a very low profile, she reached a very high stature. So that is what the author wants to say. Everything is in the mind. How your basic profile doesn't define what you're going to become. Fine. So here she was a prostitute, but she later became the queen. Okay. So Maria Theresa Christina also occupies a very important place in history of Europe. So almost for 40 years, Maria Christina has held the power. So there is also a mention of Queen of Byzantium there. So she was one of the queens who was promoting political and social activities in Europe. Okay, so the author talks about the Queen of Byzantium also. So next, let us see what is there. So statecraft actually does not add dignity to women. So that is not feather in the cap that I'm the queen, I'm administrator or anything like that. Okay, so that doesn't add any power to them, but it is actually just to the society how well it is done, how well an administration can be done by women also. It is just showing off. Okay, so it doesn't add dignity to women, but moreover adds a responsibility to women. It is just an added responsibility to women. Fine. So the author also quotes about Rani of Jhansi and Chand Bibi. Okay, so these both are very important queens in Indian history. So Rani of Jhansi you already know, right? So how she fought against the British people in order to gain independence for her kingdom. Okay, so she has given the max. So when no man was ready to take up the administration, she herself took powers into her hands and she starts ruling her kingdom. So that is Rani of Jhansi. Then we have Chand Bibi also. Chand Bibi was actually an Indian warrior. Okay, she was a queen and she was very well known to have safeguarded Ahmednagar, a city in north part of India. So she is also very famous and she also fought against Britishers in order to gain freedom for her kingdom. Fine. So that was Chand Bibi. So author quotes all these Indian queens who have fought against Britishers in order to gain freedom for their kingdom. So author actually finds no special theory about women. But what does he do? He finds that the Buddhist sacred texts are there, right? So they talk about human species. So whatever teachings Buddha has done, the teachings of Buddhism or the texts that are there in Buddhism, they all talk about the equality of women. They don't talk about the power in women's hands or anything like that. They don't talk about any special theory that discriminates man and women and it says that a woman is equal to man. Nothing like that. There is no special mention about anything there. But it only talks about the human species, like all the humans are considered equal. Fine. They are not like, there is no discrimination. This is man, he has to do such and such a work. This is woman, she should not do such and such a work. No. In olden days, if you compare, a few women were actually confined to household work only. They never used to come out of the house also. They never used to take powers into their hands. But here what happens, it is different. In Buddhism, it is different. Here actually, long ago, when few Hindu women were confined to household work only, during that time only, even in Buddhism, it was like women, like there is no discrimination between man and women. All the human beings are considered equal. So that is what is the difference the author finds between Hinduism and Buddhism. That is the position of women in Hinduism and Buddhism. So since there is no discrimination, everybody is considered equal only. So they are all human beings and no discrimination. Okay, so there is no discrimination even in these four noble truths. So what are the four noble truths that we have to understand? These four noble truths, the formula of dependent origination, then eightfold path, all these come as the teachings of Buddhism. So these are the sacred truths that are there under Buddhism. Okay, so these four noble truths we have to understand. So there also there is no discrimination between women and men there. So this truth of suffering, truth of understanding, truth of cause of suffering, all these come under four noble truth. It is not, and there is no discrimination that a woman should suffer like this, a man should not suffer this. So there is nothing like that. Okay, so everybody is considered equal under Buddhism. But according to nature, there may be discrimination. But in Buddhism, there is no discrimination at all. Fine. So we have the formula of dependent origination. Like each and every person is dependent on each other. Okay. In a family, if you consider, or maybe in a society, one person will be dependent on another person in one or the other way. Fine. So this way, the formula of dependent origination has been justified here. Then we also have this, the eightfold path of liberation. Liberation, how you reach the state of nirvana, you say. Okay. So in that eightfold path means 8 different ways in which you can reach liberation. Fine. So this also there is no discrimination in when it comes to Buddhism. So eightfold path of liberation we can understand like right thought, right understanding. So all the right way of leading a life. So there are 8 ways the Buddha has told in order to lead a very straightforward life. So under that there is no discrimination, like women should only understand, men should not understand. So there is nothing like that. Okay, so right understanding, right thought, right character, so right speech, all these are important both for men and women. So there is no discrimination at all between men and women in Buddhism is what the author is trying to say. So the fundamental equality of men and women are like, that is actually the lodestar of Buddhist society. What is a lodestar? So you can see that star, that is the pole star, right, that shines forever, right? So that is called as the lodestar. Pole star, nothing but lodestar, means it is like a guiding star for you. Okay, so like you don't know the path, you just look up the sky, that star is always visible, then you will know which path to go. Like a compass, right, it will always point to north, right? So that way you can consider as the lodestar in Buddhist society. Okay, so that equality of men and women is supposed to be the main theme of Buddhism. Okay, so under that only we have noble truths, then eightfold path, all these. So wherever you go, the basic rule that has to be there is equality between men and women. So this the author is highlighting in order to make it clear to the readers to understand the position of women between Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay. So what was the status of women in Buddhist countries? You know, Buddhist countries, right, like Sri Lanka, Burma, all these. Okay, so those are the Buddhist countries. So the status of women in that Buddhist countries actually was defined much in advance compared to the Hindu society. Okay, so long ago, even much before the Hindus could give statecraft to women and consider them equal to men, it was defined much before then. Okay, so women were considered equal to men. There is no discrimination at all there. So Buddha was actually quite broad-minded. Okay, so he started giving his teachings, right? So we can note that he was broad-minded, liberal, and also tolerant. Okay, so he was a liberal minded person. He was also tolerant. So let us understand the meaning of each and every word here. So broad minded is nothing but he used to treat everybody equally. He used to understand what the other person or what the practice of society is going on, how is it going on. So he was broad minded to accept things. Okay, so then he was also liberal. He was not very confined, he was not narrow minded, he was not confined to one thought only. He was liberal means, as he was broad minded, he was able to think in diverse ways. Okay, so he used to think in various ways, so that made him liberal thinker. Okay, so then he was also tolerant. He was tolerant towards the other religions also. Somebody else comes and talks bad about Buddhism, he was very tolerant. He used to teach them in to lead their life in a proper way. So that way he was very tolerant. He was religiously tolerant, as well as he was very tolerant in the society comparatively. Okay, so he was also tolerant. So these were the qualities of Buddha that brought him to a very high stature. So Buddha actually laid a foundation for emancipation of women. So what is emancipation? That is bringing up of women, making them equal, that is come to forefront in the society. So that was emancipation of women. So Buddha accepts invitation by Amrapali. Amrapali was a courtesan in the king's court. Okay, so she is also called as a Nagarvadhu, more or less equal to the status of a dancer, a prostitute. So something like that. So she was a courtesan, you can say. Okay, so she was a Nagarvadhu. She invites Buddha when he comes to give a lecture, okay, in one of the places in Gaya. Okay, so that is northern part of India. So when he invites her, everybody talks about Buddha. Everybody tells him she is not a very good woman, so you should not be going. So that is what they say. She is not a woman from whom you should receive any kind of hospitality. So she was actually very interested in serving Buddha. So Buddha wanted to go there, but many people advised him not to go. So what Buddha did was, he actually advised those people to keep their mind in control. Fine. So he says, you have to keep your mind in control. Whenever you go to such a woman also, you should praise her beauty. You should praise the nature only. You should not look at her beauty in form in a different way. Okay. She is not there to seduce you, but she is there to give you, as there goes a saying that the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Okay, so you have to just look at her beauty, praise her, enjoy. That's it. So you should not do it in a different way. You should not look at her in the eyes of lust. So that is what Buddha tells everybody there. Finally, he accepts her invitation. He goes to her mangrove. Okay, so she has a mango orchard, mangrove you can say. So he goes there to, and he accepts her invitation. He goes there. She has an opportunity, she gets an opportunity to serve Buddha during his last days. So Buddha was in his last days. So that time she gets an opportunity to serve him. Okay, like not that he is in his deathbed, but when he was few days before. Okay, so that time she invites him, she offers him the hospitality. Then she actually gets an opportunity to serve him, for which she was very happy. She considered it to be very sacred. Okay. So Buddhist women were actually made lot of contributions to religious texts also. Okay, so there are many people who made contributions, but here what you should notice, there were women who made lot of contributions. Okay, in Buddhist society, women were the ones who made lot of contributions to Buddhist texts, sacred texts here. Okay, so they were actually considered equal to men, because the literature what they contributed to was very noteworthy. Fine. So the figures of Savitri, you know Savitri, right? Savitri, Maitreyi and Gargi. So let me just tell you short instances just to remind you who is Savitri. Savitri, when her husband was taken away by Lord Yama, she goes to Yama, argues with him and gets her husband back. Hope you remember that, Sati Savitri, then you can relate it, right? So Savitri goes to Yama, fights for her husband's life, and she brings him back alive. So that is Sati Savitri. Then we have Maitreyi, means the wise one. The meaning of Maitreyi is wise one, who is very clever. Okay, so what did she do? She was an Indian philosopher. She has contributed to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Her contribution is there for Upanishads. She has contributed various chantings, and she has contributed various philosophies that are quoted in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So that is Maitreyi. Then we have Gargi also. Okay, so the wife of Parashar Maharshi, so that is Gargi. Gargi is believed to have written lot of hymns, okay, that is chantings, hymns for Rig Veda. Okay, so she has also contributed her in her own way for Rig Veda also. So all these women are noteworthy in Buddhist society. So all these are women who actually captivated the hearts of Indian. You would have read this one Upanishads, you would have read Vedas, all these, right? So all everywhere there is a contribution of women. So as I gave you examples, like their contribution was there in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, also Rig Veda. Okay, Gargi has contributed for Rig Veda. Okay, so these are the contribution of Buddhist women for Vedas and Upanishads. Okay, so here you can note that the women are actually considered equal to the men. Their contribution is also noteworthy when it is compared to men. Okay, so this was what the author talks about, that is many women he talks about over here. So by this we come to an end of today's session. So hope this session was very interesting for you. So let us meet again with another more interesting topic of first sem, whatever the prescribed by University of Mysore. So till then, keep learning. Let us meet again shortly. Bye-bye. Thank you.